I welcome you all here again for the next session. Our second session is a book launch whose title is Jinnah, Its Successes, Failures and Role in History by Wahjoc Ahmed from Stockholm University. Welcome him on stage. Please, sir. He'll be joined by Asad Rahim Khan, who's a lawyer, and Salman Akram Raja, who's also a lawyer. Please, sir, welcome on stage.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? No. Hello, can you hear me? No. So there is a problem. Hello. This is working, yeah? Okay. Hello. Hello. No. Hello, can you hear me now? Okay. Let me try yours. We need a third mic, please.
Hello.
Thank you. Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be talking about Professor Wahjoc's book that you just heard about. It is titled Jinnah, His Successes, Failures and Role in History. So clearly this is not a work of hero worship, as a read through the work would reveal. And Professor Wahjoc has delved into Mr. Jinnah's remarkable life, his successes, but what he describes as his failures as well. And that is interesting for us, given that we look at Mr. Jinnah, the man, much less than we look at Mr. Jinnah, the creation of our minds and of our, if you like, state narratives. So we will, during the course of this brief conversation, try and see what it is that Professor Wahjoc adds to the vast corpus of writings about Mr. Jinnah. And I have with me Asad Rahim, a remarkable young scholar, a barrister and a writer whose writing a lot of us are huge fans of, and who's also a Jinnah scholar in his own right. And if I may summarize the way I think we are accustomed to now thinking about Jinnah, to my mind there are, let us say, three strands that come to mind. There is the official state narrative that emerged maybe in the late 1960s but was fully formed through the 1980s, the Zia years, Jinnah as the champion of Muslim nationalism who fought for and created a state in which Islam would somehow find expression. So that became the established state narrative by the 1980s. And that narrative then was challenged in a manner by Aisha Jalal when she came out with her book, The Sole Spokesman. In that book, she presented Jinnah not as a communitarian Islamist, if you like, somebody who was fighting for a state which would give effect to Islamic edicts and Islamic law, if you like, in a very broad sense. But for her, Jinnah was a liberal, secular politician who in the end used, if you like, the ploy of partition in order to obtain something more than seemed otherwise possible within United India. The Cabinet Mission Plan is something that is often presented to us as the fruition of Jinnah's efforts, that he was willing to live within a united India provided Muslims as a community could be politically safeguarded. Their fear of being submerged by a Hindu majority could be in some sense taken care of. And the whole argument presented by Aisha Jalal was that partition was not really the purpose of Jinnah's politics. It was to gain a better, politically more secure position for the Muslims of India within a united India, with power devolved onto the provinces and Muslim majority provinces having a say in the affairs of the federation. So that's the reaction that really happens to the state narrative through the 1980s, and very quickly then becomes, as if it were, the orthodox understanding of Jinnah's career among the quote-unquote liberal progressive intelligentsia of the country. So all of us through the 80s and beyond grew up accepting the Aisha Jalal thesis as the correct understanding of Jinnah's politics. And the creation of Pakistan after the failure of the Cabinet Mission Plan is then attributed to the Congress party and Mr. Nehru not accepting the Cabinet Mission Plan. So the partition and its horrors are in a sense taken away and attributed to Nehru rather than those who were seeking partition. So this became a very comfortable narrative for a lot of us growing up. And this is the narrative that Professor Ishtiaq now challenges. So in a sense, his book is a counter to the Aisha Jalal narrative. And he says so quite clearly. But what that does, in a sense, is it takes us back to the official state narrative. Now, the official state narrative was that Jinnah was indeed working towards partition and the creation of Pakistan, and he wasn't merely using Pakistan as some kind of a bargaining chip or a bargaining counter. So in a roundabout sort of way, what Professor Ishtiaq is arguing or suggesting in his book is at one level similar to the state narrative that had come into full bloom by the 1980s. But he does so not as an admirer, if I may say. He does so kind of objectively. But in that objectivity, one can see that he sees Jinnah as failing at various levels. Now, the failure aspect is clearly not a part of our established state narrative. And Asad here, on the other hand, is again a scholar, as I said, of the Pakistan movement and Mr. Jinnah. And he's written deeply, if not extensively, about the Aisha Jalal thesis as well. And Asad also disagrees with the Aisha Jalal thesis. His long piece in the Dawn a month ago, or a little longer, is a must read, I would suggest. If you go and look up the Dawn Sunday supplements, you'll find Asad taking on the Aisha Jalal thesis. But he does so more admiringly. So that, I think, is the distinction between Professor Ishtiaq and Asad. So for Asad, Jinnah's quest for Pakistan as a separate state was a genuine quest, was not just a bargaining chip. And what Pakistan has become since is obviously not something Asad subscribes to. But at one level, there is overlap between the state position, the position that Asad takes, and the position that Professor Ishtiaq takes about Jinnah's politics, the intent to create Pakistan through partition. But at another level, they disagree fundamentally, and I'll try and see if we can bring out those disagreements and present them before the House here for consideration. I hope, Professor Saab, that was a fair summary of your position.
I would say yes.
Okay, I'm
Although, I mean, at this stage, maybe we should accept your presentation.
We can build on that, and now the floor will be yours. I've overspoken already. Yeah. So, tell us then something about Jinnah's career. If we start really at the early stage, let us say the period 1906 and 1916 up to the Lucknow Pact.
Right.
So, how do you see the Jinnah of that period and what Jinnah was to become later? Do you see the roots of that in that period, or is it a departure from his early years?
It's a departure in terms of the positions he took and the arguments he proffered to defend his standpoints. But it's the same man seeking every time a position where his word would prevail. And so he looked for arguments, I think very sincerely, in favor of Indian nationalism, and I quote him extensively on that. I think at the same time, he was a man who would not let another leader be greater than him. This was something that he was obsessed with. And Gandhi came and he transformed the politics of the subcontinent from constitutions, from speeches in the Constituent Assembly, in the Imperial Assembly at that time, and he brought it out in the public. And it was a number of things which led to that. One was the Rowlatt Acts, where all Indians, including Jinnah, Gandhi, everybody was shocked that having supported the British during the First World War, 2.5 million people joining the army voluntarily, big donations coming from all over India. What they got was the draconian Rowlatt Acts. And then Jinnah is critical of that, very contemptuous of that, and I quote him. And I think that's the best part of Jinnah's career as an Indian nationalist. But he's overshadowed by Gandhi when the Khilafat movement comes. And may I point out to this August gathering that it's the Muslims who went to Gandhiji and not the other way around. So what was Gandhi's problem? Had he said, this is a Muslim issue, we won't support you, then he had no moral right to expect that the Muslims will join the Hindus and other Indians in asking for the freedom of India. It was as simple as that. So when Gandhiji then becomes the leader and he goes out in the streets and he protests and people follow him, that Jinnah would not accept. He thought he would be reduced to second fiddle. And that in 1945, when he's speaking in September, he goes back to Gandhi and says, remember that man, wanting to be the leader of this and that, but now he's proven that he is a fascist. So this was an obsession for Jinnah, and I think leaders do have such problems.
Now let's contain ourselves to this period first.
Okay.
So you describe Jinnah as an Indian nationalist at this point in time. So and the
high point is the Lucknow Pact.
Okay.
Yes.
Now if I may just question both of you a bit on the Lucknow Pact. Now in the Lucknow Pact, Jinnah acts as, an extraordinary lawyer, as it were, more than a politician. He presents a constitutional settlement in which Muslims would have, by way of separate electorates and representation in the assemblies that were expected to come into being with the Government of India Act that was perhaps being discussed at that time, and we got a Government of India Act in 1919. True. So Jinnah presents a scheme for separate electorates in the Lucknow Pact. And that presumably is to allay the fears of his Muslim colleagues. And what we see in the Lucknow Pact is that Punjab and Bengal, with Muslim majorities, would accept a share in the assemblies far less than their majority would suggest. So they would allow their majority to be converted into a minority, while they would gain a much bigger share in the assemblies of the United Provinces and elsewhere in India where the Muslims were in a distinct minority. So some kind of a balancing act is presented. So at this point in time also we see Jinnah as appealing to a Muslim constituency. So he's not just a secular Indian national. He's still, as early as 1916, acting and addressing the concerns of a Muslim constituency. So how do you see Jinnah at this point in time?
Thank you, Salman Saab. It's a privilege for me to be on this stage. Ishtiaq Saab has written a book that is maybe more, not maybe, in fact, absolutely, more extensively researched than the vast majority of literature on Qaid-e-Azam. And what I appreciated was its extensive use of primary sources. Raja Saab needs no introduction, along with Ashtar Saab, perhaps, absolutely, our most distinguished lawyer in this country today, and also somebody who is deeply immersed in reconfiguring what the heart of Pakistan is or what the heart of Pakistan should be. 1916 is a very interesting year. And if you fast forward to 1943, which I think is Mr. Jinnah's second most important speech after the 11th August 1947 speech, he uses 1916 as the cutoff point, which is that I joined the Congress party because of people like Gopal Krishna Gokhale and because of Dada Bhai Nauroji. And even though Mr. Gokhale was a Hindu, the expression he uses is, hope sprang eternal, that it was this Hindu leadership that gave us a better deal, that gave us the hope of a better deal from within the Indian political system. But 1916, besides being the year of the Lucknow Pact, is also the year that Mr. Gandhi arrives on the Indian political stage. And it is something that Mr. Jinnah himself says was a sort of turning point. Where I somewhat diverge from what Ishtiaq Saab says is, I think there was also some fair bit of ideology at play beyond politics. We tend to forget that in the 1910s, it was Mr. Jinnah who was the most eminent young Indian nationalist and not Mr. Gandhi. And when Mr. Gandhi arrived at the fag end of that decade and started preaching concepts like Satya and Ahimsa and Dharma, that's when Mr. Jinnah said, please, once you inject religious majoritarianism into this movement, we won't be able to talk about constitutionalism, we won't be able to talk about civil liberties, we won't be able to talk about anything. I am watching this party, the Congress party, which is my party, turn into a majoritarian beast in front of my eyes. It's not something I can recognize anymore. So it was, I think, that path that had already begun in 1916, and you can see that हिंदू मुसलमान इत्तेहाद का सफ़ीर का लक़ब उनको दिया गया था, उसमें भी, इफ़ यू डोंट माइंड माई सेइंग, तब भी उनका ईमान डगमगाना शुरू हो गया था कि ये अक्सरियत पसंद लोग हैं, ये हमारे बुनियादी हकूक़ को महदूद करेंगे, ये हमें इस तरह बसने नहीं देंगे जो कि मेरी ओरिजिनल ख्वाब थी या जो कि मैंने शुरू में सोचा था या इब्तिदा में सोचा था. So Ishtiaq Saab makes a very interesting point. जो कन्वेंशनल बयानिया वो ये है कि लखनऊ पैक्ट इज़ द हाई पॉइंट, हिंदू मुसलमान इत्तेहाद का ये एक मिराज था. लेकिन फिर उसके बाद जब नेहरू रिपोर्ट आई और नेहरू रिपोर्ट में अलहदा इलेक्टरेट्स की बात को मुस्तरद कर दिया गया, तो वहाँ फिर कायद-ए-आज़म मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना साहब आहिस्ता आहिस्ता से
जी come to the Nehru report in a moment now. So we can now, I think, move from the 1916 Lucknow Pact towards the Nehru report of 1928.
Lekin I would like to ask some from clarifications. How was the Lucknow Pact not meeting the demands of the Muslims? Why did he repudiate it in 1924? What had happened? Is there any explanation for that?
Actually, if we get into too much detail, we'll run out of time very quickly. So I want to do
I'll
a
try to
broad
answer later.
overview of
Right.
what you suggest was happening and what I think we recall. So between 1916 and 1928, we see a period of politics which becomes, as you rightly say, popular politics, mass-based politics, no longer politics just limited to speeches within the Imperial Council and so on. And this is a politics that Mr. Jinnah was not, would you agree, suited to. He kind of sidelined during this period because the Khilafat movement is a movement out there in the streets, and it's not being led by the likes of Mr. Jinnah. It is a different kind of leadership that emerges during the course of the Khilafat movement. And this is a leadership that, in tandem with Gandhiji, uses expressly religious idiom and religious conceptions of politics, if you like. It's not separatist because you have Gandhiji participating in the Khilafat movement, but it is overtly now, in some sense, religious.
May I add something?
Please. Yeah.
I think this is also a myth that with Gandhi, religion is brought into politics. There was already Arya Samaj there. Brahmo Samaj was already there, and they were preparing Hindu identity with a view to reform it. The Wahhabi movement was very strongly entrenched in northern India, and they had a strong position in the frontier also. So religion was already in politics. When Gandhiji comes in with his politics and religion, he tries to find what is common regarding humanity in the Quran, in the Bible, and in the Gita. So it's a different way of using religion to counter Hindu nationalism, if you want to call it, Islamic nationalism, or separatism, if you want to call it. He is trying to find common ground. Where does God and religion bring all humanity on one platform? And I give you one example. In 1937, when the Congress had won elections and the Bihar government was installed, they invited Gandhiji to come and speak and tell them how should we now run a government when we had been opposing British rule all along. And he says, what is Ramraj? I may not suggest that we use Lord Ram or Lord Krishna because they are not part of history. But Prophet Muhammad, Abu Bakr and Umar, and especially he says Umar, is the par excellent example of a ruler who rules the world and yet he is accessible to the common man and lives like a common human being. So Gandhiji's use of religion is to come up with what is best in all the traditions. So that's how I look at it.
Okay. And I mean, you actually now remind me of what Abul Kalam Azad was doing during this period of time. This is the period of Al-Hilal. So Abul Kalam Azad, who later on becomes a major Congress leader, was in effect advocating Muslim militancy through his pan-Islamist, Jamaluddin Afghani-inspired writings of the period 1911 to about 1919, when he has his major breakdown. So you're right, religion in some sense was already there.
Right.
Among various strata of Indian society, both Muslim and Hindu.
Yes.
Savarkar's writings were emerging,
Right.
the RSS, the Hindu Mahasabha was coming into existence. So yes, religion was in the air,
Yes.
clearly. And it had to find expression at some level. But what we see then is that during the 1920s, as the Khilafat movement rises and then dies down, the demand for separate electorates becomes a major issue in Muslim politics.
And weightage.
And weightage, yes.
Yes.
As I said, in Lucknow Pact,
Yeah.
Muslims had agreed, or Mr. Jinnah had agreed to altering the weightage of Muslims in various states.
Yeah.
In some states less than the population, in other states greater than the population percentage in those states. So this conversation then continues through the 1920s. And what you bring out is that there is a conflict between the Muslim League itself during this period of time. There are divisions within the Muslim League.
Right.
There is the Sir Shafi group backed by Allama Iqbal on one side.
That's right.
And then there is the Jinnah group, or what was then called the Jinnah League. So Iqbal and Shafi on one side and Jinnah on the other really are contesting parties within the Muslim League through the 1920s. And that's a very interesting thing that we often don't recall about the 1920s, that Jinnah still somehow is less communitarian than the mainstream of the Muslim League, and he still somehow wishes to go back to a position of Indian nationalism, as if it were.
Right.
But it's more the Shafi-Iqbal group that is insistent on separate electorates.
Jinnah was not a loyalist to the British in that sense as Sir Shafi and Iqbal were, comparatively speaking. Jinnah would take an independent position until, I would say, the Second World War, when he goes and talks to Linlithgow. And
Well, let's stay till 28 first.
Okay,
Yes.
let's
So-
name that. Yeah.
So during this period, Asad, how do you see this period leading up to the Nehru report, in which the separate electorate demand is rejected, and then a change results in the politics of India. So till then, there is the possibility of some kind of a compromise between the Muslim political leadership and the Congress on the question of separate electorates. But the 1928 Nehru report seems to quash that possibility.
That's correct. Well, a few modestly suggested caveats. It is a bit generous to say that Mr. Gandhi was trying to come up with a cocktail of the best of what humanity represents and what drawing from different faiths, and therefore everything he was preaching should be bought by all segments. Again, the same 1943 address, but we don't even need to go there. The policies that were being advocated, which have to do with schooling, which have to do with rights, which have to do with population, which have to do with an overall aggressively macho Hindu nationalism, were all there. And the man was very intellectually sophisticated, so he could actually make a rhetorical pass towards Islam, towards Islam's holiest personages. But let's not forget that the Congress party, under the apex of Mr. Gandhi, was, in terms of hard statistics, it had 3% Muslim representation. Abul Kalam Azad, who is hailed by Pakistan's progressives for some reason, was considered a quisling, to use Mr. Jinnah's word. The expression he used was a quisling because it was symptomatic of essentially you selling out to the majoritarian party and putting up a fig leaf of Muslim representation. And that's why separate electorates went to the heart of the issue. Why? Because Muslims, or any religious minority for that matter, do not vote in blocks. And when they're not voting in blocks, the first past the post system tends to decimate whatever people they're able to elect. And that's why Mr. Jinnah was so aggressively advocating for separate electorates, even though initially he had his own reservations about them.
That's
and
good. You know that.
Yeah, I do, sir. I read your book also.
Yes.
And in a strange mirror image, when the remnant Pakistan National Congress was left over, not to get away, sir, from the 30s, post-Pakistan. So you find this existential crisis within our own opposition and our constituent assembly, where the Pakistan National Congress is saying, hum separate electorates nahi chahte, because we want to become part of a composite society. And that leads to the Muslim League being very confused, which once used to be a minority party who wanted separate electorates, that why is the minority saying that it should become part of a larger composite nation? So
you see the wisdom of the Congress, it was consistent even after partition.
Absolutely not. I don't see the wisdom at all. And I'll say why. I don't agree at all with what the Pakistan National Congress was advocating after 1947, for the sole reason that Muslim representation in a one-man, one-vote constitutional democracy
after Pakistan came into being.
Yes. In terms of the Congress maintaining the same intellectual stand it had before, yes. They were consistent. Just one tiny end to this. As far as the repudiation of the Lucknow Pact is concerned, again with great respect, this book has cited Sir Sikandar Hayat. Sir Sikandar Hayat's rejection of what Mr. Jinnah was doing.
Not Sir Sikandar Hayat. Sikandar Hayat is a professor.
He's a professor, not Sir.
He is not that Sikandar Hayat, the politician. Sikandar
I'm sorry. Sikandar Hayat, the professor.
Yes.
Sikandar Hayat, the professor.
And Rafiq Afzal, who's the main author of the history of the Muslim League. Both
Theek.
are important.
Gentlemen,
Sirs
we
or
get
civilians,
bogged down in
the
too much
Sikandar.
detail.
Acha, chale.
I don't want us to get bogged down in too much detail. We don't have that much time. So what we see is that up to the 1928 Nehru report, politics has changed. There is a division within the Muslim League. Other Muslim parties have emerged. The Khilafat movement then gives rise to parties like the Allama Mashriqi's Khaksar Tehreek, Majlis-e-Ehrar. You have the Jamiyat Ulama Hind of the Deoband. So these are all major Muslim configurations. And none of them are really beholden to Mr. Jinnah. And they have their own independent existence and also mass appeal, if you like, roots among various segments of Muslim society. So what we see then after 1928 is that while Muslim League continues, carries on, you have all these other configurations that have also emerged. And this is a period that I would suggest is a period when Mr. Jinnah is perhaps sidelined a bit. And we see him indeed leaving India in 1931. He's invited to the first roundtable conference, but then he's not even invited to the subsequent roundtable conferences. And that suggests, in imperial eyes at least, a lowering of his relevance in Indian politics. And he sets up chamber as council in London, starts practicing, dabbles a little bit in local politics, not with great success, but great success as a lawyer indeed. So this is a period till about 1934, late 1934, that he's out of Indian politics, from late 1930, mid-1930 to late 1934. So what was this? Why did Mr. Jinnah go away?
I have no clue. What did he do there for 4 years? He amassed a lot of money, that we know. It's all in the public. Sorry,
No, was this out of some sense of despondence?
It must be. I don't know what was he seeking, and he thought that the Muslim League itself was ridden with so many problems that there was no light that he could see in his own party. And I mean, that's the explanation which makes sense. He went there, stayed there for 4 years, but he didn't give up his connection with politics. I think he used to come every year. I've read that also somewhere. So he was connected, but he was away from the Indian scene. I just wanted to make one point, I think, to what my learned friend has said. 3% Muslim representation in the Congress has to be understood in from the fact that 1909, the Muslims had been given separate electorates, and they were encouraged to seek their future as a separate community. So only the Muslims with a nationalist consciousness of all Indians were steadfast in remaining with the Congress, Jamiyat-ul-Hind, and Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, Khan Bahadur Allah Baksh Sumru. You know, these are people of great merit in their own right.
Certainly.
So, I mean, there are Muslims who don't understand or don't accept this separatist movement of the Muslims. Yeah.
Okay. So through the 30s then, we move on and we come to 1935, when the Government of India Act is enacted by the imperial government, and that gives rise to a constitutional framework and the promise of elections with some kind of restricted but mass participation. And it also provides for separate electorates in the provincial assemblies. So for instance, in the Punjab assembly, out of 200 odd seats, or 180 odd seats, 84 are reserved Muslim seats.
Right.
And similarly in Bengal and in the UP, there are very significant numbers of Muslim seats provided by the Government of India Act of 1935. And that is when Mr. Jinnah returns and once again starts participating in active politics inside India. And this then leads to the 1937 elections under the Government of India Act. And the 1937 elections you describe as something of a setback for Mr. Jinnah.
Quite. Well, the results were such that the Muslim League was routed in the Muslim majority provinces, and I actually hold the Congress responsible for not realizing that this communal card can now be played to gain back Muslim support for the Muslim League. And Jinnah is on record telling the governor of Bombay that henceforth I'll use communalism to rouse Muslim fears of Hindu domination. And he says, in a united India, Islam will be annihilated, Muslims will be obliterated. And he goes on and to all parts of India, including in the Muslim Hindu majority provinces, and at Kanpur on the 30th of March 1941, when the Lahore resolution had already been passed, the Muslims confront him and say, what will happen to us? And I quote Jinnah saying that I'll make 2 crore Muslims experience martyrdom and get smashed. So he was willing to sacrifice the Muslims
left behind in India.
Yeah, whose interest we are supposed to believe that he represented.
Okay, let me just get Asad's reaction to this. So Asad, would you say that the 1937 electoral defeat changed fundamentally Jinnah's politics?
Absolutely. 1937 was where the Damascus conversion happens, which is that once you give the Congress party government, it turns out that regardless of the high principle that they ascribe to, at the end of the day, they are essentially a communal organization, and they will not give you free breathing room in a country in which they control the state machinery. That was the first thing. The second thing was, Ishtiaq Saab is right that Mr. Jinnah has in various addresses said that we are trying to create a separate country where the minority left behind in the major country is going to suffer. And then he said, suffer we have to. And he grounded this in his own experience whenever he would speak about the minority in that country, because he himself was essentially from there. He would say that this is about us, we. He would use the expression we, that if we have to make this sacrifice, we will make this sacrifice. It goes back to the greatest good. And again, there is a bit, not Ishtiaq Saab, but there is a tendency when holding Mr. Jinnah up to an impossible standard that there should have been some sort of perfect solution in which not only should the vast majority of Muslims have been safeguarded also, but there should have been some means by which those Muslims should be protected, which is also something that Mr. Jinnah was trying to work through. Mr. Liaquat Ali Khan was also trying to work through. Yahan bhi protection, udhar bhi protection. But that idea of the minority staying behind in India cannot divorce us from the fact that we should not achieve Pakistan for anyone. So that's the, I think, the second thing. And he also says they are the first pioneers. The first pioneers are the Muslims from the minority provinces. They are the ones who struggled. They are the ones who were the light, the words used were, the light in the dark. So in addition to what Ishtiaq Saab said, I think we need to read what Mr. Jinnah said about the minority Muslims in, holistically. Finally, as far as the late 30s is concerned, I think that would also answer a lot of questions people have about the cabinet mission plan, which is that in 1946, people say, oh, if Mr. Jinnah did want a separate Pakistan, why did he accede to the cabinet mission? Well, for the sole reason that he had seen what happens when you abandon the government to the majority party. They will ensure that they will close every single door, not let you in, and you will have no say in what a future constitutional arrangement will hold. So he wanted that, and he wanted to ensure that Punjab and Bengal remain undivided. It's the only reason he accepted the cabinet mission, which was always grounded in separatism and always grounded in a sovereign Pakistan.
You see the cabinet mission is leading to a sovereign Pakistan? Because there were provisions in the cabinet mission plan which allowed for secession.
And very briefly, sir, with your permission, and that is why Sardar Patel said this is suicide. He said it's suicide because Mr. Jinnah is getting everything he wants. He's getting an undivided Punjab, an undivided Bengal, and he's getting a secession button. So within 7 or 10 years, the groups can opt out and leave. So the cabinet mission made perfect sense for the Muslim League in 1946, bearing in mind, and this is a point that Ishtiaq Saab makes very well, that after the war, the situation had drastically changed. And this, because of that, you had to make some sort of concession. Having said all of that, though, once Mr. Jinnah saw that the Muslim mass was not intellectually satisfied with the cabinet mission, he rejected it full force. And that's why Lord Mountbatten is complaining for the rest of his life कि मेरी बात नहीं सुनता था, etc.
What do you say?
I would say like this, that these ministries which were formed by the Congress party
in 1937,
yeah, 37,
were they
39.
oppressive? Were they oppressive? Of
Not
Muslim?
at all. That's what I'm saying. Lord Linlithgow, who was encouraging Jinnah to demand something concrete, and the Lahore resolution comes out of it. Then the 3-4 governors of these provinces, they are all on record, and I've quoted them, that there is no proof that the Congress governments were oppressing Muslims. The Pirpur report and the Sharif report are concoctions. These are fabrications. At most, they are an exaggeration of very minor incidents. So you have Linlithgow, who is the patron of Jinnah, saying this. So how can you allege that the Congress government gave a bad deal to the Muslims.
Well, sir, taking your point at total face value and conceding, then it appears that the Congress government from 1937 to 39 seems to be much more progressive than what followed with Mr. Nehru or Indira Gandhi or Narendra Modi or every single Congress party or BJP or Jinnah Sangh government that succeeded. But coming to 1937 to 1939, whether it is the Vande Mataram issue, whether it is the intellectual issue that was being posited, accepting what Ishtiaq Saab said, that these reports are concoctions, the fact remains that the Muslim majority certainly felt oppressed to the extent that there was widespread resentment against that rule. So I am saying this when conceding, let's say, for the sake of argument, conceding Ishtiaq Saab's points. Please.
Intellectually and honestly, do you also believe that? Or it's just to concede the point to me?
No, I don't, sir.
Huh? Achha. So what's the point then?
I don't.
Okay, now whatever might have happened,
Yes. Close कर दें? और मैं यार भूल जाना. चलो. Sorry. I'm so excited, I think.
so we see that between the 1937 election and the Pakistan resolution of March 1940, the one big development that has always puzzled me, and I'll take this opportunity to question both of you and hope for an answer, is the Sikandar-Jinnah Pact.
Ji.
Why did the Sikandar-Jinnah Pact of late 1937 happen? The Unionist Party had emerged as the predominant, as if it were, Muslim party outside Bengal. Bengal had its own parties. But in the Punjab, the Unionist Party had won something like 119 seats as opposed to 1 or 2 by the Muslim League. So why would the head of a 119 seat party, Sir Sikandar at that time, Sir Sikandar Hayat, enter into a pact with the leader of a party that had 1 or 2 seats and allow them, as if it were, ingress into Punjab? What explains that? I've never really understood what led to the Sikandar-Jinnah Pact.
It was 1936 when the Progressive Writers Union first passed a resolution in Lucknow saying that we should radically reform Indian society along the socialist principles. And then Jawaharlal Nehru, as President of the Congress, delivers his presidential address where he says, we will abolish Zimidari and we will recast India in the light of the Soviet model of development. And Zimidari means land ownership, and the Muslim League, whether it was in the UP or later on in Pakistan, or let's say the northwestern, people flocked into the Muslim League because Jinnah said that landlordism would be gone and Islam will be annihilated. So that's the message. And to the Barelvi ulama, he said, you can go out and preach anything about what Pakistan would be like. Pakistan ka matlab kya, la ilaha illallah. This was spoken all over. I mean, I'm talking of the 40s now. So the 1937 is the fear of a socialist India coming into being under the Congress party. It's not Hindu Raj, because ultimately, and I quote Jinnah pleading to the same Congress government to save the Muslims in India, and they did. And just to demonstrate the point, 21% of the population of West Pakistan would have been Hindu and Sikh. By December 1947, it was reduced to 1.6% because...
Okay, let me pause you here. So you're suggesting that the Sikandar-Jinnah Pact was a pact between the large landlords of the Punjab,
that's right,
and who needed maybe a spokesperson in Delhi to further... How do you react to that, Asad?
No, sir. I think the gentry of the time, yes, most of them were landowners in terms of Punjab. Also, there was not much buy-in for accepting Mr. Jinnah as the sole spokesperson for the Muslims. So your first step is, how do we consolidate something of a strong Muslim leadership with the materials that you have? So when he returned to what is now Pakistan, when he returned to the subcontinent after the 30s, then he made common cause with everyone. He made the Sikandar Jinnah Pact because he understood that within the Punjab, well, this is the gentry we have, this is the gentry we need to work with. Again, when that pact lost its efficacy, Mr. Jinnah said it is dead and we will never go back to it. So he understood from a strategic point of view that you need to make common cause. Having said that though, I would disagree with him ever being intellectually on board with any understanding of protecting land holdings, protecting the big sarmayadars. He has said in multiple speeches, 1944 Muslim League Working Committee, prior to that also, this 1943 address, Muslim League presidential address, he said, we are not going to be a party for the capitalists, we are not going to be a party for the landlords, we are not going to be a place where you accumulate wealth in a few hands.
But
so, I'll just conclude very quickly. Now, we also seem to think that Mr. Jinnah had these superhuman powers and he should have been everything to everyone. This is one gentleman with no political antecedents. He's up against the Congress, he's up against the British, he's up against the Hindu Mahasabha. Raja Sahab corrected my pronunciation yesterday, I'm still getting it wrong. He was up against Pathan irredentists in KP, he was up against Punjabi unionists in this province, so he was up against the Muslim liberal commentariat that was still buying what Abul Kalam Azad Sahab had to sell, ki ji, hum sab bhai bhai, and you know it's going to be rivers of milk and honey and interfaith peace. When that experience, and again I will this time intellectually concede to Ishtiaq Saab's point. Let's say that the 1937 to 39 government was acceptable conceptually. The Muslim mass did not accept it. The Muslim mass saw it as a source of oppression. So he made common cause with Mr. Sikandar and with the rest, and then when they had outlived their utility, Mr. Jinnah saw them for what they were, which was retrograde legatees of British colonialism.
Okay. A very quick reaction to this.
No, I would say that if Jinnah Sahab was against all these forces that you have identified, what was he actually fighting for then?
Sir, the country you are sitting in.
Is that true? But that's what I also say. That's my position as well. Aisha Jalal's thesis is destroyed today. With your agreement?
Yes, sir.
We
agree.
That's why I wrote this book.
Ji.
Okay, Pakistan is what he demanded, and that's what his demand was.
Certainly.
I've said he used all this without believing a word of some of the things he was promising. Islam, when he used, it was simply a lawyer coming up with a clever argument to convince Peer Sahib Manki Sharif and the peers of Pakistan, of Punjab and so on, go out and plead whatever you want to. And you know, if you look at the election campaign, there is, you vote for Pakistan, you vote for Prophet Muhammad, you vote for the Punjab Unionist Party, it's for Baldev Singh and Khizr Hayat Tiwana. Muslims who do not vote for Pakistan, their nikah will be annulled and they would be denied.
Okay, let me.
And so he was using all those arguments. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Sir, this point is lost because people are not political scientists, they are generally historians. I'm saying once you speak a word, that word is no longer your property. So Jinnah was doing all this as a clever politician, and I concede the point that he wanted a separate state for which we have today, but the word is stronger than Jinnah. And it came to haunt us. And it came to haunt us.
Okay, you want to react to that?
Well, sir, I would still say that there was still a incredible consistency for a politician who has to take all of these constituencies with him in terms of his rhetoric. I can't remember Mr. Jinnah on record saying, "Aapki nikah annul ho jayegi." But there is a difference between the high politics of Delhi parlor games and the Muslim mass movement, which has to translate into electoral votes.
Right.
And if you're going to send out various people, so who were these people? There were people like Khwaja Nazmuddin in Bengal, Dr. Mahmood Hussain in Dhaka, Bahadur Yar Jang Sahab, Qazi Isa in Balochistan. So various people, different intellectual strands coming together to make a movement whole. So that is going to be subject to interpretation.
Right.
When the religious right also shows up, we should bear in mind that a lot of the religious right intellectuals, whether they were Maududi Sahab, whether it was Majlis-e-Ihrar, whether it was the JUI people who now show up here and say Pakistan ka matlab kya, were intellectually fervently opposed to the idea
That's
of
right.
Pakistan.
Okay. That's correct.
So the point being, this was not ever meant to be the Muslim version of Mr. Gandhi's Ahimsa Satya Dharma. This was a reaction that we need protection from a religious majoritarian movement. We will ground it in protection for religious minorities. And just one last sentence. It is Mr. Jinnah who, when confronted with the question, will you be a theocracy, he said, we will not be ruled by priests with a divine mission. So he was completely clear in terms of his role as far as the religious right is concerned.
Okay, let me just intervene for a moment. Now the thing is, and I put it to both of you and to the House as well, that today, what is the relevance of Mr. Jinnah to us? Do we really think that Pakistan is constrained today or should become what Mr. Jinnah really wanted? And we can disagree on what Mr. Jinnah really wanted. So today we find Jamaat-e-Islami says that they are trying to create Jinnah's Pakistan. Hafiz Saeed says he's trying to create Jinnah's Pakistan. Asma Jahangir and I.A. Rahman were trying to create Jinnah's Pakistan. So what was Jinnah's Pakistan, you see? And I would suggest to you that, yes, Jinnah's life, remarkable life and career remain matters that we should be interested in academically and personally to draw inspiration and so on. But as a people now, as a polity that has to take decisions today, what do you think is the continuing relevance of Mr. Jinnah, or what he really thought? Has he not become a rhetorical prop for everybody, really? Because everybody is trying to create Jinnah's Pakistan, and everybody reads into his life and into his politics what they wish to read. So how would you suggest we now deal with Jinnah as the icon?
The way I look at Jinnah's role is that for him, there was no worked out vision for Pakistan. His main interest was to have India partitioned, rightly or wrongly, the way he believed that Muslim needed a separate state. That's the main point. But in doing so, he used all those tactics which are full of contradictions. And now, if we sit today, 75 years later, and try to find what was Jinnah's real idea of Pakistan, it's impossible. It's a task which will never lead you to any consistent, coherent formula. When he said that there will be no theocracy, it doesn't mean it meant a secular state. Because I've explained,
I didn't
that's
say.
right, that's right. Because I've said that when Muslims say that there is no theocracy in Islam, they are absolutely right. But from there, you can't derive, or this is a fallacy to believe that it means a secular state. In Islam, there are two ways of looking at the state. One is autonomy, which is the Sharia or the divine law is supreme, not the clerics. That's the point I make. So, Jinnah can be interpreted the way you want, but look at what has happened to Pakistan in these 75, 76 years. We are bankrupt almost.
Yes.
Hatred for India, confrontation with India, which was the basis for the partition of India, has led us to this present stage. I think it's time to bury the hatchet, have good relations with India, normal relations with India.
Last comment. So on 2 points. The first is relevance and the second is what did he want? As far as relevance is concerned, Pakistan is not a normal country as far as Mr. Jinnah's dream for it goes. There was a China before Mao. The jury is still out whether Mr. Gandhi sped up independence or not. The Americans have Washington, but there are multiple founding fathers and they are contested in terms of who contributed more. Without Mr. Jinnah, there is no Pakistan. And if you get Pendrell Moon's comment on this, he says that the great man theory of history may have been validated once as far as Mr. Jinnah is concerned, because without him, these forces would not have united. That is why people like Ardashir Kawasji say that if there is a founding ideology of Pakistan, it has to be within Mr. Jinnah's speeches and statements, because he was so integral to the whole project. So one cannot say, there are other founders and so on and so forth. You would not have had this country if it weren't for him. The second thing is, well, what did he want, if he is indeed relevant? Either be, if one doesn't mind me saying, I don't think it's rocket science at all. Just if one were to go through his speeches from 1940 all the way to 1948 and his policy issues, again and again he says, the Legislative Assembly is to be sovereign. You are a sovereign assembly, you have all the powers. What does this mean? This means that the parliament should be at the heart of your republic. People talking about a presidential system and picking up his one diary page, that was his private ideas. A man who was a parliamentarian his entire life, who kept on saying that the Constituent Assembly is sovereign, spoke about a parliamentary system. That was number one. Ishtiaq Sahab is absolutely right. Today is a negation of Pakistan. He, in terms of hating India, he said that our relationship should be like the US and Canada. The third thing was, again, Gustakhi Maaf, civilian supremacy. So he said in 1948 in Cadet College, that Staff College, that you have to listen to your civilian masters. This is your oath. Please read it. So parliamentary supremacy, civilian supremacy, good relations with India, and a federation in which minorities should be able to get full play as citizens of the state. So if for 75 years you are going to do the exact opposite of what he says, and then in the end say he was very ambiguous, we don't know what he means, different people want different things from him, that's on you. That is your issue. And if last sentence, if Hindustan under Narendra Modi can become an essentially majoritarian project that is rooted in European fascism from the 1930s and vindicates the idea of Pakistan, then how shameful is it that Pakistan is failing the idea of Mr. Jinnah? That's all.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll carry on this conversation, or a part of it, tomorrow, regarding the role of Islam in the constitutional framework of Pakistan over the last 75 years now. I'll be talking to Sarah Holes of the Humboldt University and Asif Iftikhar of LUMS on the role of the Council of Islamic Ideology and Islam more generally in the constitutional evolution of Pakistan tomorrow. And thank you very much for this session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an interesting talk. And we'll take a break of 15 minutes. The next session will start at 2:10.